Hi, this is Larry London. We welcome you to another exciting edition of Border Crossings. Today, we are joined by a singer who immigrated from Ethiopia to the United States. And I know Voice of America's most popular audience is in Ethiopia. So this is an exciting show for everybody who's Ethiopian. And Meklit is her name. Meklit is going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about her brand new EP and her career as well. So welcome, Meklit. How do you say, back in Ethiopia, how do you say welcome? You're welcome, or welcome to the program.
Namatachu.
Okay, I'll leave that to you. It's great to have you here on Border Crossings on the program. You've released a number of albums, and you've garnered millions and millions of followers and streams around the world. And what is a National Geographic Explorer?
A National Geographic Explorer is a relationship with National Geographic. And basically what it means is they believe in my storytelling, my abilities to work with arts and culture as a way of getting to know the world in a different capacity, in a deep capacity, in a way that reflects peoples and possibilities. I became a National Geographic Explorer in the year 2018 for a project that I co-founded called Movement, which is a podcast and a radio show and a live show that uplifts the songs and stories of immigrant musicians.
Mm-hmm. And you just did these performances at UCLA and some colleges, and so that's great. I'm sure it was well received.
Yeah, so we Movement has a live show, and we work with local immigrant, migrant, and refugee musicians everywhere we go. The show is a mix of theater, music, and storytelling. I tell stories from my life. I share the stories that have come from those immigrant experiences, and we also welcome local artists. So in LA, we worked with 3 LA artists. When we did it in the Bay Area, we did it with 3 Bay Area artists. When we did it in Seattle, we did it also in collaboration with 3 Seattle immigrant artists as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, though, for somebody who's done so many different shows around the world, and what's it like to perform back home in Ethiopia? I mean, when you go there, I know you live in part-time in the U.S., part-time you have a house there or something, but
well, no, I live in the United States.
Okay.
Yes, and first of all, going to Ethiopia and performing in Ethiopia is really special. I haven't done it in a few years. It's been since before the pandemic. It took me a long time to come back to music at all after the pandemic,
Wow.
which was an interesting experience, just having those years where, at least in Ethiopia, I know the music continued a lot during the pandemic years. In the States, there were those years where totally there were no shows, which was a wild experience. So I haven't been back to Ethiopia in several years. I am planning a trip. I also have a 4.5-year-old, so I cannot wait to bring him as well, to have that experience of playing shows in Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. What I like to say about it is that in the States, I have to explain everything. I am a paragraph, not a sentence, in the United States. So
I like that.
From Ethiopia, you make music that brings jazz and singer-songwriter music into Ethiopian music, and wow, what? So tell me more. In Ethiopia, they're like, oh yeah. In fact, like they get it totally. And once I had a Peace Corps volunteer who had been teaching in Jimma in Western Ethiopia tell me that he was introduced to my music by his 8th grade student who said, "This is what happens when Ethiopian music goes to America."
Wow.
And there you have it. A 14-year-old in Jimma understands. You know what I mean? Like they
gets it. That's important.
So that's my experience.
That's great. And that you're touching 8th graders, you're reaching them, getting through and resonating. That's remarkable, because at that age they're pretty young and just learning how to tie their shoes. But
well, that's thanks a lot to Ethiopian television, who many different stations play my music, and I'm so grateful for every single listener in my home country. It just means a lot to me that my music has been received there.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to say this is a great time to be an African artist, because if you look at what's happening, the Grammys added a new category, the Best African Pop Performance, this year for the first time.
That's
And
right.
I,
And
you
in
know,
fact, my very dear friend Wayna, who's another Ethiopian singer, musician, she and several others who have been deeply involved in advocacy within the Grammys to make that category. So I want to say that, it's super exciting that that category has been added, or there's been two actually African categories added, and that has been because of the advocacy of African musicians to say, we are here, our music is powerful, it deserves to be heard, it deserves to be on a global stage outside of that one world music category that's like, well, it's a Western music and everybody else. So
right.
it's a big deal. And I really have to thank folks like Wayna, Bashuga Damu, and many, many more who pushed for that to happen.
Now, the weekend, forget the weekend. He's probably one of the biggest names in Ethiopia because of his music success. Abel
Yes,
Tesfaye would be the actual name. We have with us Meklit Hadero, and she is here to talk about a brand new EP, which
that's
is
right.
called Ethio Blue.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
tell me about Ethio Blue.
So, I actually wrote most of the EP Ethio Blue when I was pregnant, which was now like, it was the spring of 2019.
Hmm.
And I was just feeling it's interesting in that moment where you're bringing new life into the world. And I really had the feeling that I wanted to bring new songs as well. And I wanted them to be songs that both kind of used music to announce our existence at a global scale, but also to say, to speak to the kind of softness, the heart centeredness, the kind of empathy, a sense of possibility that we could manage the multiple intersecting global crisis that we're dealing with, like climate change and things like this. And so the songs were about imagining possibilities and holding ourselves in a space of empathy while also shining self-love into the world. And so the song itself, Ethio Blue, is a song about shining love into the world, love for Ethiopian culture, for the pentatonic scales, but also for the people who created this music, who are rooted people. I there was a very dear friend of mine who's an amazing Masenko player. His name is Indris Hassan, and he told me a story of how he learned to play Masenko while he was a shepherd in his youth, playing for the animals. And this
Wow.
like blew my mind. And I thought of the way that the depth of this music actually rises from these experiences, these everyday experiences connected to the land, connected to the earth, and then connected to each other. And I just wanted to ring that beauty and that connection to the earth and that
Mhm.
connection also to jazz, that way that Ethiopian music and jazz can so naturally have a relationship with each other. And that
Mhm.
became the song Ethio Blue.
And one of the nice things about performing for animals is you won't get any bad reviews.
Hey, you don't know that? You don't know that? Like two of them will walk away. They'll be like, no, not now.
Meklit is with us. We're talking about her new music. And with that, would you do a song for us?
I would love to play Ethio Blue.
Oh, perfect. Great lead. And here's Ethio Blue, the title track to the new EP, Meklit on Border Crossings.
Transatlantic rivers run, currents pushed us past the sun. Music pulsed and beat and flew. The music bleeds, Ethio blue. Pentatonic DNA filled our veins and made us his way. Music lived between us two. Its power is sweet, Ethio blue. Na 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 na. Na 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 this kind of hallelujah jumps out of me. And I say, thank you, God, for the music. You know, it came from so much life. From calloused hands that played instruments when they were done with the soil for the day. And the shepherds playing flute for the animals, the women with the banjos, who gave sustenance to each other with their melodies. We still hear you, we still hear you, we are listening. Brown skin love, including scars, cell by cell, distilled from stars. Music rose and bloomed and grew. Now it's ours, now it's ours. ETO blue.
Border Crossings, Meklit and Ethio Blue. The new EP is out now. It's available.
It is. It came out on March 8th. Came out on International Women's Day, and it is out in all the places that you get your music.
And it must be such an exciting time, because this has been sitting on the shelf since pre-COVID.
Yes.
You know, and so now you finally get to put it out. And in that time during COVID, has anything changed about you, your perspective, your outlook, with songwriting, anything? I mean, you have a child now, of course.
I mean, that's the big thing, you know, becoming a mom is just a huge, you know, change. It's a huge milestone in life. And, you know, I read something that was saying that the human brain changes as much in becoming a mom as it does during puberty when you're becoming an adult. Like, that's how much you change. You're actually a totally different person. And I think that, you know, it's such a joy. It's such a, you know, the giggles, the snuggles.
Oh, yes. I have two, so I know exactly.
You have two, you know,
yes.
And those 4-year-old snuggles, they're just the best.
Yes, yes.
So that was a big thing. I also spent 2 years, or almost 3 years, in fact, as the chief of program at a place called Yerba Buena Center for the Arts I started in January 2020. Which you can imagine was wild. And I was there in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And I learned so much about working in arts institutions, and really what it takes to build institutions that can make culture last at long-term scale. So that was a huge learning for me. It's the kind of thing where, like, I'm just beginning to articulate what that was, really. And then also during that time, I was able to launch my podcast, radio show, and live show movement, working with immigrant, migrant, and refugee musicians. So even though I haven't released an album in quite a while, it's been a culturally, spiritually, you know, family-wise, very, very deep time. And it's been a time of a lot of evolution.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. You've had an amazing journey with, as you said, lots of stories, and we're going to get into some of those stories. I want to hear some of the stories from you. Would you do another song?
I would love to play the song called Antidote, which is the first song on the EP. And it really is about the bittersweetness, the pleasure, and the pain, and how we keep going in our lives despite the challenges.
All right, here is Antidote. It's Meklit on Border Crossings.
Everyday heartbreak, everyday love, everyday kindness. Remember your mother. Everyday pressure and everyday pain. Everyone striving to find home again. Antidote, antidote, antidote songs, everyday pushing, we keeping on. Everyday passage, everyday bread, you yourself are an offer, turn the world on its head. Antidote, 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 take the power from the poison, remind them of what is inside them, courageous ones. We have enough for all of us at the table. Everyday water, everyday spin, everyday sunrise, more oxygen, everyday lifting, and everyday peace. You are my survival, you are my relief. Antidote, 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 take the power from the poison, remind them of what is inside them, courageous ones. We have enough for all of us at the table. You are the antidote, 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 you are the antidote.
That's Antidote. It's Meklit who's here with us on Border Crossings. Now, you have mentioned, and we've discussed the fact that you were a refugee.
Yes.
And so what does it mean to you to be a refugee, to have been a refugee?
It is a very important part of my life story. And, it really defines in many ways the early part of my life. I came to the US as a refugee when I was just a girl. And, in your childhood or your formative years. And so there was so much about learning to be in the US, learning to adjust to the culture here that has translated into how I became who I became. And so in many ways, exploring what it means to be a refugee is about telling my own personal story, my own personal journey. But also, I choose to focus on the stories of immigrants, migrants, and refugees because I think that on a global scale, we need more stories about immigrants, migrants, and refugees that humanize people, that don't talk about them in terms of statistics, but that talk
Right.
about them, that talk about us in
Yes.
terms of real people living real lives and ultimately making incredible contributions
Mhm.
to the cultures that they end up calling home, to the places that they end up calling home. And I do it through music. I do it through, uplifting both the stories and the songs. And I call it, this is kind of my kind of underground tagline for the project is the bumpin' soundtrack to a radically diverse world.
Wow, you like to get creative. You're also very involved in cultural activism, I was reading. So, you do a lot of different things. And of course, as we were talking about World Refugee Day, that is a day that is marked June 20th this summer. And we typically try to, on Border Crossings, bring in refugees and have them on the show and feature refugees who are making music. We've done it over the last few years. And it's
Fantastic.
a wonderful occasion. We like to give voice to those that need voice. And so today it's the voice of Meklit, and Ethio Blue is the name of the new album. And so you said you had to make some adjustments and changes when you moved to America. What was the biggest change that you were faced with?
I mean, I think the biggest change at that time was, and again, this is a long time ago, but the biggest change was really being apart from the connections, from the community connections, the family connections that were the lifeline and the lifeblood of what our family was in Ethiopia. And in many ways, over the last, few decades, we have built that in the US as well. We have much more family here now. And when I go to Seattle, where most of my family is in the United States, I'll just to really make it super clear, like I had my baby shower there, and there were 60
Wow.
cousins there.
Wow.
60 cousins.
Cousins.
So in many ways we have, it's very different than what we experienced when we first came here, but there just weren't very many. There weren't many Ethiopians in the States when we got here, and there certainly weren't when we were in places like Iowa. So, the biggest shock was just that kind of disconnection and really in many ways loneliness, and then slowly rebuilding the kind of networks of community, because people aren't islands. And in Ethiopia, people don't live like that. People are super networked. Like my mom would say to me, Meklit, when you were born, if I wanted to go out, I would just go out. I wouldn't even think about it, because there were so many aunties and cousins around. There was always someone to take care of you. And here it's like you have to schedule a babysitter and make sure you did it 2 weeks in advance. And then
Right.
the babysitter, you had between 7 and 10, and you have to be back, leave at 7 and back at 10. And everything becomes an exchange of money rather than an exchange of community, where it's a collective care. In Ethiopia, it's more like you care for me and I care for you, and you need help and then I need help, and we exchange that and we share that, and we support each other in that. So it's a very different way of living. And that was the biggest shock on coming here, I would say. I mean, maybe my mom would have a different answer, but I don't think so.
Speaking of mom, what does the name Meklit mean? What the origin of your name?
It's from the parable of the talents in the Bible. So it means the gift, the talent from God. But also, when I was in college, I had a very dear friend of mine who had a Ge'ez Amharic dictionary. So Meklit is a Ge'ez word. And when he looked up Meklit in the Ge'ez dictionary, it said one who knows the balance of things. So I kind of hold on to that one too.
Yeah, you'll take that one. That works.
I'll take that as a goal, not as a destination. You know what I'm saying?
Meklit is our guest here on Border Crossings. And so you were talking about Ethiopia, and when you came here to America many years ago, that you didn't see many other Ethiopians. Now it seems like there's an Ethiopian restaurant on every block. Every place I go, I see an Ethiopian, and I've eaten there. Where they have the spongy bread and you dip it into the plate of meat.
Well, now we everywhere. We
Yes.
are everywhere.
You are everywhere. Thanks to Teddy Afro and guys like him.
Well,
have,
musically on the airwaves, we're everywhere
Yes.
because of folks like him. Absolutely.
Yes. And so you mentioned at the very beginning of the interview that you tell stories. You want to be considered, you're like a storyteller. So when you tell your stories during your show, like Movement, for example, what gets the biggest reaction? What story? Because we probably don't have time to tell, all your stories, because I'm sure you get a lot of them. But, what people just are amazed, or they get touched by it, or they come up to you after the show and say, that story really moved me.
Well, it's kind of it's like that show is in one long arc. It's like the stories build up to each other. So I start out by telling a very simple story, and I can tell you that one right now. But what I'll say is that the show gets, much deeper, and the show kind of goes on a journey with me. But I start out by telling a story of my very first trip to Ethiopia as an adult, which was about 20 years after we left for the US. And it was just my mother and me. And there were so many cousins to visit that we went to a different relative's house for breakfast, lunch, and dinner the entire time. We were just stuffed. And this one afternoon, when food and coffee had stretched into their fourth hour, my mother was telling a story about the States. And when I was growing up, she would always call Ethiopia back home. She wouldn't even say the name of our country. She would just say back home. On that day, she was telling a story about the States. And she said, well, back home, this. And we both just sort of stopped and we looked at each other and we burst out laughing because we knew that back home had shifted and that it was both. And that at that point, it was both and it was everything inside of us all together living kind of this equal parallel life. And that was a new plane for us. And we discovered that together in that living room in Addis Ababa. So that's just one little tiny little story that I
Mm-hmm.
tell.
So I wanted to ask you, if you had the chance to collaborate with three artists, dead or alive, who would be your top three picks to work with?
Oh, goodness. Nina Simone. I
Oh,
would
yeah.
love to write a song with Nina Simone. She was so raw in her honesty and she never held anything back.
Hmm.
And that was an amazing influence for me in the way that I started writing songs and, and just searching for a way to express myself, especially when I was a kid, like in my teenage years. I would say, for me, like one of the greatest voices of all time, Aster Aweka, the Ethiopian's great classic singer. That would be a dream. And maybe somebody like, I don't know, like three is impossible. I'll give you three for the last three. Coltrane, Beethoven, because he was so intense. That intensity. I don't even know how I would collaborate with somebody like that, but it would be really super interesting.
Hmm.
Um, and like maybe like Joni Mitchell.
Oh, there you go. Recently honored at the Kennedy Center here in DC.
Yeah.
Meklit is our guest on Border Crossings, and we've got time for one more song. So, what are you going to sing for us?
I am going to sing a song called Here to Imagine.
Here to Imagine, Meklit on Border Crossings.
The future is a woman with a head held high and an afro on her shoulders, reaching up for the sky. The knowledge of her people is filling up her mind. She understands manipulation. She won't fall for it this time. An era evolution. Are you part of its might? You invited to the party, but you better step right. At the center is love. It will be different this time. We are here to imagine what the future looks like. Here to imagine. Here to imagine. Here to imagine what the future looks like. What the future looks like. 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 Future looks like.
Border Crossings, she's Meklit, and the song is called Here to Imagine. Is that on the new EP, Ethio
It
Blue?
is. It is on the new EP. It is indeed. All three songs are on the new EP. Of course, like this version that I'm singing today is just me and one instrument, right? So on the EP, there's my full band and it's, everything has been like intricately arranged. So it's a much bigger sound. But today you're getting the intimate version of the songs.
Well, we're also getting our own exclusive version. So that's really special. So I'm happy about that. How many albums have you made? Totally?
A lot. Sometimes I have to count because I've done so many collaboration albums too. So this is my fifth solo album. Wait, fifth or fourth? I put out an EP in 2007 called 8 Songs, which like nobody has. Because I took it off I took it off the internet. But
you weren't happy with it?
Well, it was so stripped down, but it's actually special. Sometimes I think about putting it back up. That's one. 2010, I put out an album called On a Day Like This. 2014, We Are Alive. 2017, When the People Move, the Music Moves Too. And then now, Ethio Blue. And then next year, I have another record coming out, which is already finished, that will be out in about 11 months. So there will be a sixth album coming out then. And then I've done tons of collaborations. I did an Ethiopian hip hop space opera called Copperwire Earthbound. I did a collaboration with an artist called Quinn DeVoe, Meklit and Quinn, looking at the black roots of rock music, which was really super fun. I'm featured on a ton of other records too. So it's like, music is always, always bubbling, always bubbling.
Mm-hmm. What's the best part about what you do? What's your favorite part of this business? Singing, songwriting, touring, meeting people? What is it?
There's so many things that I love. I love performing live. I just love it. I'm in my joy. I'm in my sense of freedom.
Your happy
and
place.
I get to share that with people. Mm-hmm. But I also love having ideas and making them happen in the world and being my own boss. Like that's something that's really, really special and is, it's hard to, like, I realized at one point around 2010 that being a musician was running a business. And so I took a class from an organization in San Francisco called the Women's Initiative for Self-Employment. And I learned how to run a business. And so, and so like that part, I get a kick out of that too, because I like working for myself. Mm-hmm. And I also like making space for other people and making space for other artists and musicians. And I've done that throughout my career, especially through my cultural activism, through movement, interviewing and sharing the songs and stories of other immigrant musicians, through the Nile Project when I was working on that, through my work at the Red Poppy Art House and Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, and all of this stuff. So I like making space for other artists and telling bigger stories together than we can on our own.
Mm-hmm. Do you have your own label? Do you sign artists to a record label?
I have not gone in that direction because I don't know that the economics of labels work anymore. Mm-hmm. But I do self-release. So I did release this by myself. I did self-release.
Wow.
Blue.
Great. I get so many calls from people in Africa saying, how do I get my music heard? So you would be a great resource.
It's not that hard to self-release. I think the barriers to entry for people on the continent is really about it's actually the financial systems. So it's not the culture systems. So for example, it's easy to put your music on Spotify. It's easy to put your music on Bandcamp. But where are the royalties going to go? Where is the money going to go? And so the barrier is the same barrier that exists to like integration in like international economic systems as a whole. That's the barrier to getting people's music heard. But actually the pathway to just putting it online and putting it out there, that's the easy part. So, and those financial systems questions are bigger questions than I know how to answer. Mm-hmm. Those are questions that probably somebody has thought about though, and I wonder who.
Are you planning a tour?
I have been on tour. I spent most of February and the first part of March on the road, and now I am back for a while, and then we head out again in May and then again in the summer. So yes, there will be many more shows.
Where are you right now?
I'm in San Francisco.
Okay, inside your house? Because it looks like, it looks like my backyard when I sit in the,
Oh no, this is my music studio.
The corner of the wall kind of looks like, I'm sitting outside and enjoying the sunshine.
This is my music studio. So I am here surrounded by instruments where I make my podcasts and where I write my songs.
So what's your podcast name?
Movement with Meklit Hadero.
All right, great. And what instruments do you play?
I play guitar, and I have started to play kirar, Ethiopian harp, although I'm really looking forward to continuing to study. That instrument is incredibly complex and gorgeous. And, I am not a kirar master, but I can accompany myself on the kirar, which I'm super that's just something that's really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I play some percussion, some light percussion. But really my instrument playing is to accompany myself. Like I'm not like a guitarist. I accompany myself on the guitar. And I learned to play an instrument. I learned guitar specifically because it was so hard as a woman to be surrounded by musicians who are primarily men who wanted to interpret what I wanted to say. And they'd be like, oh, you mean this. And I'll be like, no, that's not what I mean. And then it became clear to me that it would be much easier to show them rather than tell them. And so early on, like around 2006, when I first started playing guitar, that was the reason, to be able to have a shortcut to expressing my musical ideas and to be able to collaborate with people on equal footing. But really, it was also about being a woman in this industry.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you know, we're getting ready to wrap up here. We appreciate your valuable time. And I did, before we go, wanted to ask you social media sites where people can find you. How do people connect with Meklit?
Yes, all of my handles are Meklit Music, Meklit Music, and that's Instagram, Facebook. I don't really use X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. I don't really use that so much anymore. I'm really primarily on Facebook and Instagram and also TikTok.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's great. And we are broadcasting around the world. Many people are meeting you for the first time in 100 different countries, around the world. And I know none are more excited to have you on today than those in Ethiopia. We have an affiliate there called Sheger FM. We're on the air at Sheger FM.
I have been on Sheger FM.
Yeah, Mesa is a lovely lady. She runs that channel, and we've been on for 10 plus years there on Sheger FM. But I wanted to give you a chance to say something to the worldwide audience. This is your opportunity to greet people. We have the troops tuned in as well. So whatever it is you want to say, Meklit, from your heart to our audience.
I just want to say that I am so glad to meet you. Every listener is appreciated, every pair of ears. I know that everyone has a story. I know that everyone comes to music with their own life stories as a current that meets the current of a song. I want to say that I hope that my music, and I hope that music in general, can be a place to ease your heart, to lift your spirit, and I hope we will meet again.
Wonderful. That's lovely. Well said. Meklit, thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate you joining us, and very exciting times about the music. And of course, in 11 months, when you put out the new album, let us know.
We'll be back.
We'd like to reconnect. Yeah.
And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So for the audience, as she said, it's Meklit Music. That's the social media handles. You can find her on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. Maybe doing a TikTok dance video. Who knows? But you can check her out, Meklit Music. Thank you so much for being with us. The new EP is Ethio Blue. And I'm Larry London. You're watching Border Crossings on VOA TV.